Our planet's coastlines hold a secret history, written in stone beneath the waves. Scattered across the globe, submerged ruins stand as silent witnesses to chapters of human history we have barely begun to read. This video will take you on a journey to 25 of these enigmatic sites, from drowned cities to sunken monuments, that collectively challenge everything we think we know about the timeline of civilization. By the end, you will see how these underwater discoveries suggest advanced societies may have flourished thousands of years earlier than believed, only to be lost to rising seas. We will explore the strange stepped pyramids off the coast of Japan and the legendary city said to lie deep in the Gulf of Cambay. What stories do these silent stones tell about our ancestors? To grasp the true scale of this mystery, we need to rewind the clock on our planet itself. Around 20,000 years ago, Earth was a very different place. We call this period the last glacial maximum, a time when immense ice sheets, some over 2 miles thick, covered vast portions of the northern continents. All that frozen water had to come from somewhere, and it came from the oceans. Global sea levels plummeted, lying over 120 meters, that is nearly 400 feet, lower than they are today. This dramatically altered the map of our world. What are now shallow seas like the Persian Gulf and the North Sea were dry, fertile plains. Entire coastlines extended dozens, sometimes hundreds, of miles farther out than they do now. These exposed continental shelves were not barren wastelands, but potentially rich, habitable landscapes, ripe for human settlement. Then the climate shifted. The great ice sheets began to melt, and all that water began its long journey back to the ocean basins. This was not a sudden flood, but a slow, inexorable rise that played out over thousands of years, swallowing those coastal plains centimeter by centimeter, generation by generation. This geological process provides the essential stage for our story. As noted by researchers like geologist Dr. Robert Schoch, this extended timeline of rising seas creates a plausible window, a span of millennia, during which early complex societies could have developed along these now lost shores. Their homes, their monuments, their very footprints would have been gradually claimed by the advancing waters, leaving only the deepest, most resilient stone structures for us to find. With this profound context in mind, our search for submerged history begins not with a dive, but with a shift in perspective, looking out at the horizon and wondering what lies beneath the waves. Our first destination takes us to a site that has become a cornerstone of this entire mystery, a place of stunning stonework resting silently off the coast of Japan. Deep in the cerulean waters off Japan's southernmost island, the seafloor holds a riddle carved in stone. The Yonaguni monument is a sprawling, enigmatic structure, a series of massive terraces and platforms that descend like a grand staircase into the abyss. Discovered by a local diver in the 1980s, this site immediately divided experts. Its features are astonishing: sharp right angles, clean flat surfaces, and what appear to be perfectly straight pillars and archways, all resting at a depth of about 80 feet. To the eye, it looks like the ruins of a vast sunken plaza or temple complex. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura has spent decades studying the formation, arguing passionately that it is not natural. He points to specific details like what he interprets as carved animal reliefs, including a distinct turtle shape, and even a monolithic face reminiscent of the moai of Easter Island. Kimura proposes the monument is a remnant of a sophisticated culture, perhaps even a piece of the legendary lost continent of Mu, submerged by rising seas over 10,000 years ago. This would place its construction in a time frame that rewrites the conventional history of Japanese civilization. Yet, skepticism provides a powerful counter-narrative. Many geologists maintain that the monument is a spectacular example of natural sandstone weathering. The region is seismically active, and the strong tidal currents could have fractured the rock along natural bedding planes, creating those deceptively perfect shapes over millennia. They argue that the human mind is predisposed to see patterns and faces, a phenomenon called pareidolia, in random natural formations. So, who is right? The debate itself is the point. Yonaguni forces us to confront a fundamental question, one that will echo through every site we explore. At what point does a curious rock formation become undeniable architecture? The answer is rarely clear-cut, and that ambiguity is where true mystery thrives. This underwater enigma off Japan serves as our first powerful lesson in looking beneath the surface, both of the ocean and of our own assumptions. The debate over Yonaguni is a dance between geology and memory, a search for meaning in submerged stone. But what happens when the ocean floor offers not just mysterious shapes, but the tangible artifacts of daily life? For that, we journey from the Pacific to the Arabian Sea, to a discovery that directly challenges the written timeline of an entire civilization. In 2001, a routine pollution survey in the Gulf of Cambay, off India's western coast, made an unexpected find. Sonar images revealed something startling on the seabed: a series of geometric patterns, right angles, and linear formations spread across a vast area. These were not random rocks, they bore the unmistakable signature of human planning. Subsequent dives and dredging brought up physical proof: stone tools, pottery fragments, and even pieces of wood and bone. The most startling analysis came from carbon dating, which suggested some of these materials were around 9,500 years old. This date is astonishing. It places this submerged settlement thousands of years before the rise of the great Indus Valley civilization, long considered the cradle of urban culture in the region. The implications are profound. It suggests a sophisticated, possibly urban society, thriving along India's coast at a time when mainstream history tells us humans were just beginning to experiment with agriculture and permanent villages. This discovery resonates deeply with one of India's most enduring legends. Ancient Hindu texts like the epic Mahabharata describe in vivid detail a magnificent city named Dwarka, the glorious kingdom of the deity Krishna. The texts recount that after Krishna's departure from the world, the great city was consumed by the sea, sinking beneath the waves forever. For centuries, Dwarka was considered a beautiful myth, a symbolic story rather than a historical place. The structures in the Gulf of Cambay, with their staggering age, force a difficult question. Could these sunken foundations be the physical remains of the fabled Dwarka? Marine archaeologists are cautious, noting that more research is needed to fully understand the site's scope and nature. Yet, the alignment is compelling: a legendary sunken city described for millennia, and a very real, very ancient settlement found precisely where such stories said it would be. This find does more than just push back a timeline. It blurs the boundary between myth and history. It suggests that ancient stories passed down through countless generations may not be mere fiction, but could be echoes of real events, of cataclysmic losses preserved in cultural memory. The silent stones of the Gulf of Cambay whisper that our ancestors' tales might be the oldest history books we have. The boundary between myth and geology is tested even further in the crystal-clear waters of the Bahamas. Here, a formation known as the Bimini Road stretches across the seafloor like a pathway to nowhere. Discovered in 1968, it consists of a straight line of massive, rectangular limestone blocks, each seemingly cut and placed with purpose. Its appearance is so orderly, so deliberate, that it immediately captured the imagination of those searching for lost civilizations. The late mystic Edgar Cayce had famously predicted that evidence of Atlantis would rise near Bimini, and for many, this was the prophecy fulfilled. a remnant of a grand harbor wall or a ceremonial causeway from a sunken world. The visual argument is powerful. The blocks align with a precision that feels deeply unnatural, their edges appearing tooled and their placement suggesting a forgotten engineering project. Yet, mainstream science offers a different, more terrestrial explanation. Geologists point out that the material is beak rock, a type of sandstone that naturally forms in shallow tropical waters. Over time, the rock can fracture along straight lines due to tidal forces and mineral expansion, creating these deceptively neat segments. The process is entirely natural, a quirk of coastal geology repeated in many places around the world. So, is the Bimini Road a monumental artifact or a magnificent accident of nature? This debate is the perfect embodiment of the tension we face with every submerged site. It asks us to examine not just the stones, but our own desire to find meaning in the deep. Are we connecting dots that were never meant to be connected? Or are we finally seeing the faint outlines of a map that has been hidden for millennia? The road, regardless of its origin, serves as a powerful symbol, a line drawn in the sand, or rather in the sea, between two ways of seeing our past. It compels us to look closer, to question more deeply, and to acknowledge that some of history's greatest secrets may be lying in plain sight, just beneath the surface of our understanding. While the debate over Bimini simmers, there is one sunken city that requires no speculation to be recognized. Off the southern coast of Greece, resting in just a few meters of crystal water, lies Pavlopetri. This is not a mystery of maybe, but a fact of history. UNESCO designates it as the oldest known submerged city in the world, a title earned through its astonishing preservation and undeniable age. Dating back at least 5,000 years to the early Bronze Age, its layout remains perfectly legible on the seabed. You can swim along its original streets, trace the outlines of homes and workshops, and see courtyards and tombs that have not been touched by the modern world above. This is not a collection of ambiguous stones. It is a complete urban blueprint, offering an unparalleled snapshot of how people lived, worked, and organized their community millennia ago. Unlike Yonaguni or Bimini, Pavlopetri is fully embraced by mainstream archaeology. There is no debate here about whether it is man-made, because every cobblestone and foundation tells a clear, coherent story. Its value is immense. It provides a direct window into a sophisticated society that thrived long before the glory of classical Greece. But within that accepted history lies a deeper, more compelling truth for our search. Pavlopetri's fate is not mysterious. It was claimed by the same rising seas we have discussed. Its submerged state is direct, physical proof that the process of coastal inundation did indeed swallow established, advanced cities within the conventional historical timeline. This fact is crucial. It acts as a scientific benchmark, a solid piece of evidence that anchors the more speculative discoveries we explore. If the sea could take a complex city like Pavlopetri 5,000 years ago, then why not other, perhaps even older, settlements 10,000 years ago? Pavlopetri serves as the essential bridge. It connects the firm ground of established archaeology to the deeper, darker waters of possibility. It proves the mechanism of loss, making the existence of other, more ancient sunken worlds not just a fantasy, but a logical extension of a proven geological and historical process. This accepted ruin gives us permission to look further back with a little more confidence into the abyss of time. 700 meters beneath the sunlit waves of the Caribbean, a discovery was made that redefines the very meaning of deep time. In 2001, a marine exploration company surveying the seafloor off the western coast of Cuba captured sonar images that stunned the small team of researchers. The scans revealed something that should not have been there, not at that crushing depth. Sprawled across an immense area of the ocean floor, over 2,000 feet down, were clear, symmetrical formations. The images suggested pyramids, concentric circles, and long, straight lines that intersected like the streets of a vast, sunken metropolis. The sheer scale and geometric regularity were immediately profoundly puzzling. This was not a shallow coastal ruin like Pavlopetri, gradually claimed by rising tides. This was a landscape resting in the permanent midnight of the abyssal plain, a depth that speaks of an antiquity almost incomprehensible. To be submerged to 700 meters, this site would have had to sink or be covered by water when sea levels were dramatically lower, a condition that last existed not thousands, but potentially tens of thousands of years ago, at the very peak of the last ice age. This timeline is the core of the enigma. It suggests a moment in prehistory, long before the pyramids of Giza were even a concept, when an unknown culture might have possessed the capability to plan and build on a monumental scale. The conventional narrative of human development, which places the rise of complex city building around 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, strains to account for such a possibility. Mainstream science, understandably, urges extreme caution. Geologists point out that the ocean floor is a sculpture of bizarre and beautiful forms. Lava flows can create flat plateaus, and tectonic fractures can produce startlingly straight lines. They argue that without physical samples, without an archaeologist's trowel touching those distant stones, the sonar images remain intriguing but inconclusive shadows. Yet the human mind cannot help but trace the lines, connect the dots, and see the ghost of a grid in those deep sea scans. The Cuban underwater formation, regardless of its ultimate origin, serves as the ultimate thought experiment. It pushes our curiosity to its furthest limit, asking the most daring question of all: what if the clock of civilization started ticking much, much earlier than we ever dared to record? This deep-sea mystery does not whisper from the coastal shelf. It echoes from a chasm of time so vast it challenges us to reconsider everything we think we know about our own journey. The crushing depths of the Cuban formation challenge us with an almost mythical timeline. Yet history provides a clear, sobering example of how swiftly a city can disappear, not in a mythical age, but within the full light of recorded history. In the winter of 373 BC, the powerful Greek city-state of Helike met a sudden and catastrophic end. Ancient writers like the historian Diodorus Siculus recorded the event in vivid detail. A massive earthquake struck the region, violently shaking the land. Then, just as suddenly, a towering wave from the Corinthian Gulf rushed inland, engulfing the entire city. When the waters receded, Helike was gone, literally wiped from the map and swallowed by the sea. For centuries, it existed only as a cautionary tale in ancient texts, a legendary lost city whose exact location faded into rumor. Then, in the late 1980s, after a long and meticulous search, archaeologists made a breakthrough. They did not find dramatic stone ruins under the waves, but something equally telling. The remains of Helike were discovered buried deep beneath layers of silt and coastal sediment, not far from the modern shoreline. The city had not simply been flooded, it had been violently submerged and then sealed by the very land itself, a process called subsidence. This discovery confirmed the ancient accounts with physical proof. Helike's story is profoundly grounding for our entire search. It demonstrates, without any speculation, that the complete loss of a sophisticated city to the sea is not a theoretical possibility or a fringe idea. It is a documented historical fact within the classical world. The people of Helike were not a mysterious, forgotten civilization. They were a well-known political and religious power, neighbors to Athens and Sparta. Their catastrophic end was a major event of their time, talked about and recorded by contemporaries. This changes the perspective entirely. If a prominent city could vanish so completely in an era of written records, leaving only stories and a buried footprint, then what does that imply for cities that existed millennia earlier, in eras before writing? Helike acts as a crucial anchor point in reality. It proves the mechanism of sudden, total maritime loss, showing us that the sea's capacity to erase human achievement is not a myth, but a recurring chapter in our shared story. This historical reality lends a chilling credibility to the older, deeper mysteries we continue to explore. The story of Helike reminds us that the sea can erase even a well-known city in a single night. But what about objects that have no story, no historical record at all, that appear on our modern maps as pure geometric mystery? In 2011, a team of Swedish oceanographers were conducting a routine sonar survey of the Baltic Sea floor. What appeared on their screens was anything but routine. Resting on the seabed at a depth of about 90 meters was a massive, nearly perfect circular formation roughly 60 meters in diameter. But it was the details that sent imagination soaring. The sonar imagery seemed to show a central, disc-like object with a long, straight tail trailing behind it, and around its edges, what looked like stair steps or corridors leading to its surface. The public promptly christened it the Baltic Sea Anomaly, and the theories erupted. Was it a crashed, ancient spacecraft, a remnant of an Atlantean power generator? A secret Nazi anti-submarine device from World War II? The perfectly circular shape felt deeply, unnervingly unnatural, a geometric intruder in a world of organic, chaotic seabed geology. It was a modern-day Rorschach test projected onto the ocean floor, where every observer saw the silhouette of their own favorite mystery. The scientific community, however, urged a deep breath and a dose of Occam's razor. Geologists pointed to far more plausible explanations. The Baltic Sea region was heavily glaciated during the last ice age. The anomaly, they suggested, could be a glacial moraine, a pile of rock and debris pushed along and then deposited by a massive sheet of ice. Alternatively, it could be an unusual outcropping of volcanic basalt, shaped by ancient flows and subsequent millennia of underwater erosion. Sonar, they cautioned, can create optical illusions, and the human brain is a master at imposing familiar patterns like stairways and walls onto random natural shapes. Yet the fascination endures, and that enduring fascination is the real lesson of the Baltic Sea Anomaly. It is not necessarily proof of ancient astronauts or lost technology. Instead, it is powerful proof of something else, our own enduring sense of wonder and the vast, unexplored nature of our planet's oceans. Here we are in the 21st century, with satellites mapping every inch of the globe, and we can still point to a spot on a map and say, we do not know what that is. It highlights that the quest for submerged secrets is not just about digging up the past, it is about confronting the sheer scale of our own ignorance. The deep sea remains the largest museum on Earth, and we have only just begun to turn on the lights in its first few rooms. This modern mystery, still unresolved, ensures that the map of human history is never truly finished, with new, enigmatic landmarks waiting to be understood. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is a testament to our modern capacity for wonder, but the search for submerged history often returns us to places where the first mysteries were found. Just off the coast of Yonaguni, the same powerful currents that carved the seafloor have hidden more than one secret. Beyond the main monument, explorers have identified a collection of other remarkable formations scattered across the Ryukyu island chain. These sites are less famous, but in many ways they are even more provocative. One is described by researchers as a distinct step pyramid, its terraced sides rising from the seabed in a series of clean, stacked levels. Another formation nearby resembles a vast, sunken stadium, a curved, amphitheater-like structure that seems to face an open, central area. If viewed in isolation, each might be dismissed as another curious trick of nature. But their proximity to the primary Yonaguni monument changes the entire equation. A single, anomalous structure could be a geological coincidence, a cluster of them, all displaying geometric regularity and all located within a relatively small underwater region, begins to suggest a pattern. The implication is staggering. If the main site is indeed the work of human hands, then these ancillary structures could be the supporting cast of a lost world, parts of a larger ceremonial complex, an urban center, or a series of connected monuments. They hint that the famous monument is not a solitary ruin, but perhaps the central temple of a sunken city, its pyramids and plazas now silent and scattered. The exploration of these sites is fraught with difficulty. The same fierce ocean currents that may have helped preserve the stone also make sustained archaeological study dangerous and complex. Divers have only brief windows to document the structures, and detailed mapping of the entire area remains incomplete. This technical challenge leaves the most tantalizing questions unanswered. How extensive is this underwater landscape? Are these formations connected by paved roads or sunken pathways? What other structures might lie buried under centuries of sediment? This cluster of potential ruins teaches us a crucial lesson about underwater archaeology. A single discovery can captivate the world, but it is often the context, the surrounding landscape, that holds the true story. The Ryukyu formations suggest we are not looking at isolated anomalies, but at fragments of a single, drowned cultural map. It forces us to shift our perspective from searching for a lone artifact to imagining an entire lost geography, a civilization whose footprint may be far larger than we have yet dared to dream, waiting patiently in the blue twilight for its full story to be told. Legends are not always born from fantasy, sometimes they are born from memory. For over 1,000 years, fishermen along the coast of Mahabalipuram in southern India have passed down a haunting story. They spoke of the 7 Pagodas, a group of magnificent shore temples said to be so splendid they angered the gods. As the tale goes, 6 of these glorious structures were punished, swallowed by the sea in a single night of divine wrath, leaving only the single, famous shore temple we see today. For centuries, this was considered a poetic explanation for the region's dramatic coastline, a myth to explain the powerful waves. Then, in December of 2004, the ocean itself offered a fleeting, terrifying glimpse of the truth. The Indian Ocean tsunami, a tragedy of immense scale, pulled the water far back from the shore in the moments before the wave struck. In that brief, surreal window, locals and tourists witnessed something astonishing. Where there should have been only sand and seabed, the receding waters revealed the outlines of stone walls, the scattered remains of large blocks, and most strikingly, a massive, sculpted stone lion emerging from the sea like a forgotten guardian. The tsunami's destructive force had momentarily stripped away the sand, unveiling what the legend had described all along. This was no myth, it was a hidden, physical reality. Following this dramatic revelation, systematic archaeological surveys were conducted. Using sonar and underwater exploration, researchers mapped extensive man-made structures spread across the seafloor. They found remains of walls, steps, and fallen sculptures, confirming the existence of a substantial submerged complex. Scientific dating places these ruins to around the 7th or 8th century, aligning with the peak of the Pallava dynasty, the very builders of Mahabalipuram's famous above-ground temples. This discovery provides one of the clearest examples on Earth of folklore preserving a precise geological and historical truth. The legend of the 6 drowned pagodas was not a fictional story, but a cultural heirloom, a carefully kept memory of a real cataclysm that reshaped the coastline over a millennium ago. It shows a continuous process of coastal erosion and submergence, a slow dance between land and sea that has claimed human settlements for generations. Mahabalipuram teaches us to listen more carefully to the old stories. It demonstrates that oral tradition can be a resilient vessel for history, carrying the echo of lost places across dozens of generations, waiting for the moment when the sea, however tragically, decides to reveal its secret and confirm what the grandmothers and fishermen always knew. The story of Mahabalipuram shows how legends can be proven true, but sometimes the sea hides entire cities so completely that even memory fades. For over 1,000 years, the great port of Heracleion was considered little more than a myth, a footnote mentioned by ancient historians like Herodotus. They described a wealthy, cosmopolitan gateway to Egypt, a bustling hub where Greek merchants and Egyptian priests mingled near the mouth of the Nile. Then it vanished, not in a single catastrophic event but gradually, succumbing to a combination of rising sea levels, soil liquefaction, and perhaps a major earthquake. By the 2nd century before the Common Era, Thonis Heracleion, as it was fully known, had slipped entirely beneath the Mediterranean waves, its location lost to time. For centuries, scholars debated whether it had ever existed at all. Then, in the year 2000, a team led by French underwater archaeologist Franck Godiot made one of the most spectacular discoveries in maritime history. Their sonar scans revealed not just scattered ruins, but an entire cityscape preserved in the silty seabed. Swimming through the site is like walking through a ghostly metropolis frozen in time. Divers have raised colossal statues of a pharaoh and a queen, each standing over 5 meters tall, their serene faces untouched by the centuries. They have recovered intricately carved stelae, stone slabs inscribed with decrees in both Egyptian hieroglyphs and ancient Greek, a direct testament to the city's role as a cultural bridge. The silt has safeguarded a breathtaking array of everyday objects, from delicate gold jewelry and ceremonial barges to simple pottery and bronze coins, painting a vivid portrait of daily life in a thriving international port. While Heracleion's submersion falls within the classical period, its rediscovery was nothing short of revolutionary. It provided physical, undeniable proof of a major city that had been erased from the map, forcing historians to rewrite their understanding of Egyptian trade networks and the profound depth of Greek-Egyptian relations. But perhaps its greatest lesson is one of humility. Here was not a minor settlement, but a pivotal economic and religious center, a place of immense importance that simply disappeared from the written record, surviving only in fragments of story. Heracleion stands as a powerful reminder that the ocean floor is not just a graveyard for ships, but a vast, layered museum of human ambition. Its silty layers hold chapters from different eras, waiting for the right moment to be read again, proving that even the greatest of our cities can become shadows, and those shadows can one day return to light. The silent stones of Heracleion show us how a city can vanish from memory, but the search for submerged history does not always lead to saltwater coasts. Sometimes the most startling clues are found far inland, in the vast, cold depths of freshwater lakes. In the early 2000s, a team of archaeologists conducting a routine sonar survey of Lake Michigan made a discovery that would quietly reshape the narrative of North America's ancient past. Their equipment, scanning the lakebed over 100 feet down, detected a series of perplexing formations. Among them was a curious arrangement of large stones, standing in a rough circle, reminiscent of the iconic stone circles found across Europe. Not far from this potential henge, the sonar captured an image of a massive boulder resting on the sandy bottom. Carved into its surface was the distinct outline of a mastodon, a prehistoric elephant-like creature that vanished from the continent over 10,000 years ago. This was no random pattern. The carving depicted the animal with a deliberate line running from its head to its heart, a detail that suggests a hunting scene or a ritualistic marking. The implications are profound. For such a carving to exist, the artist would have needed to stand next to the boulder on dry land. This means the stone must have been carved during a period when Lake Michigan's water levels were dramatically lower, exposing this section of the lakebed as a dry, inhabitable landscape. Geological data supports this, indicating that around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, the lake's shoreline was miles farther out than it is today. The vast area now covered by water was a forested valley, a perfect hunting ground for Paleo-Indians and the megafauna they pursued. If these underwater cairns and the mastodon carving are confirmed as human-made, they would represent some of the oldest and most compelling evidence of human activity in the Great Lakes region, pushing the timeline of complex symbolic expression and communal stone construction back thousands of years earlier than previously documented. The environment itself becomes a partner in this mystery. The cold, dark, freshwater environment of the Great Lakes is an exceptional preservative. Unlike the corrosive saltwater of the oceans, these deep, cold waters lack the organisms that typically devour wood, leather, and other organic materials. This means that if tools, shelters, or other artifacts were left on that ancient lake bed, they could be resting there still, in a state of remarkable preservation, waiting to be found. The Lake Michigan formations do more than add another pin to the map. They fundamentally expand the scope of our search. They remind us that rising waters are not solely an oceanic phenomenon. Glaciers melted, inland lakes filled, and shorelines retreated across the entire planet, swallowing the footprints of early peoples everywhere. A prehistoric hunting ground now lies beneath one of the world's largest freshwater seas, a silent testament to a world that was, and a powerful clue that the story of early America is still being written, one sonar scan at a time. Beneath the gentle waves of the Mediterranean, just off the coast of modern Israel, lies a village frozen in time. Atlit Yam is not a myth or a legend, but a tangible, sunken settlement from the Neolithic era, resting silently under the sea for more than 8,000 years. Discovered in the 1980s, this site offers something rare in the world of underwater archaeology, a complete and undisturbed snapshot of a prehistoric community. Here, the foundations of simple stone houses are still visible, arranged in an orderly fashion that speaks of deliberate planning. Freshwater wells, carved deep into the bedrock, show an ingenious understanding of how to access vital resources. But the most breathtaking feature is a circle of massive standing stones, a megalithic arrangement that predates the famous circles of Europe by thousands of years. This is the earliest known example of a submerged structure of its kind, a ceremonial space built by people who looked out at a very different shoreline. The presence of this stone circle is a profound statement. It tells us that the inhabitants of Atlit Yam were not merely surviving, they were building with purpose, creating monuments that likely held deep spiritual or communal significance. This pushes back the timeline for complex societal organization in the region dramatically, suggesting that the urge to mark the landscape and gather in sacred spaces is far older and more widespread than many traditional models of civilization's rise have acknowledged. Research at the site has also revealed more personal, intimate details about these ancient people. Studies of the resting places found there indicate the community faced significant health challenges, including what researchers identify as some of the earliest known cases of tuberculosis. This evidence of illness offers a somber, humanizing glimpse into the hardships of life in a prehistoric coastal village, reminding us that these were real individuals with families and struggles. Yet, the ultimate story of Atlit Yam is written in its location beneath the sea. Its careful abandonment, with tools and artifacts left neatly in place, suggests the rising waters did not come as a sudden catastrophe, but as a slow, inevitable force. The community likely watched for generations as the coastline crept closer, before finally making the difficult decision to gather what they could and move inland, leaving their homes and their stone circle to the advancing Mediterranean. This site provides concrete, irrefutable evidence of a sophisticated settled community, consciously adapting to a changing world. It stands as a powerful testament that the roots of civilization, of village life, agriculture, and monumental architecture are not only deeper in time than we once thought, but also that they flourished in places now hidden from view, waiting for us to rediscover the foundations they laid beneath the waves. The silent, gradual abandonment of Atlit Yam speaks to a slow retreat from the sea, but sometimes the earth itself moves with sudden, violent intent, reshaping coastlines in moments rather than millennia. In the shallow, turquoise waters of Elaunda Bay on the island of Crete, history is not just studied, it is swum through. Here, the ancient city of Olous rests in pieces, its stone foundations and protective walls clearly visible just a meter or two beneath the sunlit surface. Once a powerful and independent Dorian city-state, known for its minted coins and a famous treaty with neighboring Rhodes, Olous now offers a different kind of wealth, an open-air, or rather open-water museum. Snorkelers can glide directly over the orderly lines of its submerged streets, tracing the outlines of buildings and public spaces where citizens walked over 2,000 years ago. This is not a sight lost to the deep, but one embraced by the shallows, making the past astonishingly immediate and personal. The cause of its submergence is a classic tale of the Mediterranean world. Unlike cities claimed by the global rise of ocean levels, Olous fell victim to local geological instability. The region is crisscrossed by active fault lines, and historians and geologists agree that a series of earthquakes likely triggered significant soil subsidence. The ground beneath the city literally sank, allowing the relentless sea to rush in and claim the lower portions of the urban landscape. This distinction is crucial for our understanding. It reminds us that the loss of coastal civilizations is not a single story with one villain. It is a collection of narratives driven by different forces. Global climate shifts, yes, but also the restless, local movements of the Earth itself. Olous makes the grand theme of drowned history accessible in the most literal way. You do not need a research submarine or advanced sonar to encounter it, just a mask and snorkel. This accessibility beautifully blurs the line between rigorous archaeology and profound personal experience. It transforms history from something read in a book to something you can float above, a tactile connection to a vanished world. The city whispers that the past is not always locked away in deep trenches or academic papers. Sometimes it is right there, shimmering just beneath the surface, inviting us to look down and see that the footprints of lost cities are often closer than we think. The idea of a single sunken city is compelling, but what if the truth is far larger, separate from the specific findings linked to the legend of Dwarka? Broader scientific surveys across the entire Gulf of Combat have revealed a pattern that defies simple explanation. Analyzing side-scan sonar data, some researchers have mapped what appear to be vast, geometric formations spread across an astonishingly wide area of the seabed. We are not talking about a cluster of buildings or a lone temple complex. The interpretation, still hotly debated, suggests the remnants of a sprawling, ancient urban settlement that could span hundreds of square kilometers. To grasp that scale, picture a metropolitan area larger than many modern capitals, now resting silently beneath the waves. The artifacts dredged from this immense site, including stone tools and pottery fragments, have been dated through controversial methods to an age of up to 9,500 years. This proposed timeline is the core of the staggering claim. If verified, it would mean a sophisticated, organized civilization was constructing what appears to be a massive city complex along the Indian coast, at a time when mainstream history suggests humans were only just beginning to form the first permanent agricultural villages. This would not merely predate the great Indus Valley civilization, it would precede it by several millennia, potentially rewriting the entire origin story of urban life in South Asia. The sheer proposed size implies a society of immense social coordination, resource management, and technological capability, a lost chapter of human achievement on a scale we are only beginning to fathom. This site represents the grandest, most paradigm-shifting claim in the entire field of submerged archaeology. It is a hypothesis of breathtaking scope, suggesting that the pages of our deepest history may contain entire civilizations we have not yet named. Yet it remains exactly that, a hypothesis awaiting the gold standard of conclusive verification, systematic underwater excavation that can provide undeniable context. The Gulf of Combat, in its vast and silent mystery, holds a monumental question: are we looking at the greatest discovery in human history, or the most captivating shadow ever cast by natural geology? The search for an answer continues, reminding us that the most profound truths often lie in the spaces between what we can prove and what we dare to wonder. The legend of the 6 drowned pagodas was just the beginning. What began with a tsunami's terrible revelation has evolved into a sustained archaeological endeavor, uncovering a submerged sacred landscape of breathtaking complexity. Systematic excavations off the coast of Mahabalipuram have now mapped not just scattered ruins, but entire, intricately carved temple complexes and shrines that march from the shore directly into the sea. These are not the foundations of simple structures, but the ornate pillars, sculpted deities, and elaborate vimanas, or temple towers, of a vibrant spiritual hub. Each stone, still bearing the marks of master craftsmen, confirms that the local folklore was describing a tangible reality, a series of magnificent monuments that once stood proudly along the coastline. This discovery shifts our understanding in a profound way. The presence of such extensive, sophisticated architecture beneath the waves tells a story not of a single catastrophic event, but of a slow, centuries-long dialogue between human ambition and the relentless ocean. Construction here appears to have been continuous, with new temples being built even as older ones were gradually claimed by coastal erosion and rising sea levels. This suggests the builders were not ignorant of the sea's power, but were instead engaging with it deliberately. They chose this dramatic, vulnerable interface between land and water as the very stage for their devotion, constructing their most sacred sites in full view of the advancing tides. The narrative thus transforms from one of sudden divine punishment to a more nuanced human story of resilience and adaptation. It reveals a culture that built in the face of inevitable change, knowing that their works might one day be reclaimed by the sea. The temples of Mahabalipuram represent a philosophical as well as an architectural achievement, a conscious decision to create beauty and meaning within a cycle of loss and renewal. This slow, negotiated relationship with the ocean speaks to a deep understanding of the natural world, where cultural expression was woven into the very fabric of a changing coastline, leaving behind stones that whisper of faith enduring against the eternal rhythm of the waves. The sea has swallowed more than cities, it has consumed entire countries. Deep beneath the cold, churning waters of the North Sea lies a lost world known to archaeologists as Doggerland. This was no minor land bridge, but a vast, fertile plain, rich with forests, rivers, and marshes that for millennia connected the British Isles to the European continent. It was a thriving, inhabited landscape, home to thousands of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who followed herds of animals and harvested the bounty of a complex ecosystem. This was not a civilization of stone monuments, but a country of people, a complete chapter of human history written on a now drowned terrain. Then, around 8,500 years ago, the story ended. The relentless melt from retreating glaciers, coupled with a catastrophic submarine landslide off Norway known as the Storegga Slide, sent immense waves across this low-lying land. The sea rushed in, and over centuries this entire country was slowly, irrevocably flooded, transforming the map of Europe forever. Its loss represents the single greatest geographical transformation in human memory on the continent. We know it existed not from legends, but from the physical evidence dragged up from the seabed by fishing trawlers and scientific dredges. The nets bring up more than fish. They bring up ancient stone tools, finely crafted bone points, and the occasional, poignant reminder of the people themselves in the form of preserved remains. These artifacts are not found in the context of streets or buildings, but scattered across a sunken wilderness, telling a story of a mobile, adaptive way of life that stretched from what is now the Netherlands to the eastern coast of England. Doggerland fundamentally expands the scale of our search. It forces us to shift our perspective from hunting for the ruins of specific settlements to contemplating the loss of entire cultural landscapes and ecosystems. This was a world that supported generations with its own sacred sites, migration routes, and oral histories, all of which vanished beneath the waves. The silence where Doggerland once stood is a profound reminder. It tells us that the rising waters at the end of the last ice age did not just claim outposts or cities, they erased whole chapters of the human story, complete nations of people whose names and languages are lost to us, leaving only scattered tools in fishing nets as echoes of their passage. This submerged land challenges us to think not in terms of isolated ruins but of vanished worlds. The silent plains of Doggerland tell a story of a world lost to the sea, but the human response to that changing world was not just retreat, it was exploration. Far to the south, in the clear blue waters of the northern Aegean Sea, another submerged site offers a different, more hopeful chapter. Off the coast of the island of Yora lies the submerged Neolithic village of Agios Petros, a settlement that has rested beneath the waves for over 7,000 years. Here, the seabed holds not the bones of a drowned country, but the vibrant artifacts of a community that looked to the sea not as a threat but as a highway. The remains are those of a thriving village with pottery fragments and finely crafted stone tools scattered across the site, telling a story of daily life and skilled craftsmanship. This discovery is a quiet revolution in our understanding of prehistory. For a long time, the narrative suggested that Neolithic peoples were primarily farmers tied to the mainland, slowly spreading their knowledge inland from fertile river valleys. Agios Petros shatters that simplistic view. Its location on an island and its clear evidence of a society deeply connected to the maritime environment proves something profound. These people were not just coastal dwellers, they were capable seafarers. They possessed the knowledge, the technology, and the courage to build boats sturdy enough to cross open water, to transport families, tools, and livestock, and to establish new communities on distant shores. This single sunken village forces us to redraw the map of the ancient Aegean in our minds. It suggests that the islands were not isolated, empty waypoints, but were actively settled and connected by a web of maritime routes far earlier than anyone imagined. The implications ripple outward. If Neolithic communities were this mobile and maritime over 7,000 years ago, then their trade networks, their exchange of ideas, and their cultural connections were likely far more extensive and sophisticated than the archaeological record on dry land has shown us. Every island settlement we know of from that era, by its very existence, implies that its sister communities, the ports and villages from which those settlers sailed, are now almost certainly underwater, lost to the same rising seas that eventually claimed Agios Petros itself. This village is not merely a ruin, it is a key. It unlocks a new perspective on human ingenuity, revealing our ancestors not as passive victims of a changing climate, but as active, adventurous navigators who shaped their own destiny upon the waves, leaving behind a sunken trail of their journeys for us to follow. The adventurous spirit of those early seafarers eventually gave rise to empires, and none built with more ambition than Rome. Yet even the grandest of empires could not command the ground beneath its feet. Along the volcanic coast of Italy, just west of Naples, the luxurious resort city of Baiae was a playground for the Roman elite. Emperors, senators, and poets all flocked to its shores, drawn by its thermal springs and a reputation for both healing and hedonism. For centuries, it was a symbol of ultimate Roman opulence, a place where the powerful came to see and be seen. but the very geological forces that created its famous hot springs were also its undoing. The land here is restless, sitting atop a volcanic caldera. A slow, rhythmic process called bradisism causes the ground to gradually rise and fall over decades, like the earth itself is breathing. In the case of Baiae, the breath was a long, slow exhale. Sections of the coastline began to sink, centimeter by centimeter, allowing the relentless Mediterranean to seep into the city's streets and villas. This was not a sudden catastrophe from a rising global ocean, but a local geological sigh that took centuries to complete. Today, the result is an underwater archaeological park of surreal beauty. Snorkelers and divers can swim along the ancient Roman road, the Via Herculea, its stone paving now home to schools of fish. They can glide over the intricate mosaic floors of sumptuous villas, the colored tiles still depicting mythological scenes and geometric patterns. Marble statues, perhaps of a god or an esteemed patron, stand silently on the seabed, draped in seaweed, their vacant stares fixed on an aquatic horizon. Baiae offers a uniquely haunting perspective on the past. It is not a ruin shattered by time, but one gently embraced by it. The water has preserved these spaces in a state of suspended animation, freezing a moment of extravagant daily life. We see the grandeur of the empire not in crumbling walls on a hilltop, but in the quiet elegance of a dining room floor now visited only by octopus and sea bream. This site teaches a different, more intimate lesson about the forces that shape history. It shows that alongside global climate shifts, the local whispers of the planet itself, the slow rise and fall of land, can just as effectively reclaim human achievement. The drowned luxury of Baiae is a poignant monument to two great powers, the inventive grandeur of human civilization and the patient, inexorable force of geology that ultimately holds the final say. While Baiae's luxury was reclaimed by a sinking coast, other ancient cities met a more violent geological fate. Along the stunning turquoise coast of Turkey, the island of Kakova holds a different kind of underwater story. Here, the ruins are not of a Roman resort, but of the ancient Lycian city of Simena, and its submersion speaks of the Earth's sudden fury. Around the 2nd century of the Common Era, a powerful earthquake struck the region. The land shuddered and dropped, and in moments, a portion of the city's coastline, along with its harbor and outlying structures, slid directly into the Mediterranean. This was not a slow encroachment but a catastrophic, instantaneous event that forever altered the landscape. Today, the result is an archaeological site of haunting beauty. Sailing over the crystal-clear water, you can gaze directly down at the sunken foundations of homes and public buildings. Stone staircases descend into the blue void, and the outlines of rooms are traced on the seabed like ghostly blueprints. Most striking of all is a submerged necropolis where ancient sarcophagi rest silently on the seafloor, their lids occasionally nudged open by the gentle currents, a solemn reminder of the community that once lived and honored their loved ones here. The site is so well preserved and so visually accessible that it has become a unique model for balancing discovery with protection. Kakova is now a strictly regulated archaeological park. Visitors are welcome to boat or kayak over the sunken city, observing the ruins through the transparent water, but touching, diving, or any form of disturbance is completely forbidden. This careful management creates a powerful intersection of history, tourism, and preservation. It transforms the ruins from mere curiosities into a protected cultural treasure, a classroom without walls that floats above the past. This approach raises a subtle but vital public awareness. As people glide quietly over those sunken walls and tombs, they are not just sightseeing, they are witnessing the profound fragility of our coastal heritage. They see firsthand how a single seismic event can rewrite geography and erase human settlement. Kakova teaches a lesson that extends far beyond Turkey. It shows that these submerged sites are not lost, but are instead held in trust by the sea. When treated with respect, they become extraordinary educational resources, silent ambassadors from a sunken world that remind every visitor of the powerful, often unpredictable, dialogue between human civilization and the restless earth below. High in the Andes, the world's highest navigable lake holds secrets not of the sea, but of the sky. Lake Titicaca, straddling the border of Peru and Bolivia, presents a different kind of submerged mystery. Its waters have not risen from melting polar ice, but have swelled and receded over thousands of years due to regional climate shifts and tectonic activity. Beneath its famously deep blue surface, archaeologists have discovered something extraordinary: the remains of ancient temples and ceremonial terraces that were clearly constructed on dry land. These are not structures that slowly flooded and were abandoned. Instead, they appear to have been deliberately incorporated into the sacred landscape by later cultures, most notably the sophisticated Tiwanaku civilization. This reveals a profound cultural response to environmental change. As the lake's water level rose over centuries, swallowing these older sites, the people did not simply see loss. They saw transformation. The submerged foundations became part of a new, layered sacred geography. Later temples were built to align with these underwater features, and rituals likely honored the ancient sites now resting beneath the waves, treating the lake itself as a living temple. This shifts our understanding of what submerged truly means. It is not always a story of catastrophic loss or forced retreat. Here, it becomes a narrative of intentional integration, where a changing environment is woven directly into the fabric of spiritual belief and architectural planning. The mysterious mooring stones and sunken portals of Lake Titicaca speak of a culture that watched the waters rise and chose not to flee, but to adapt their worldview, building their future in direct conversation with the past that lay just beneath the surface. This inland water body, far from any ocean, teaches us that the dialogue between humanity and rising waters is universal, and the responses can be as deep and complex as the cultures that face them. The sunken temples of Lake Titicaca reveal a culture that adapted its beliefs to a changing landscape. Yet this idea of a deeper, older layer of history waiting to be found resonates powerfully on the other side of the world, in the heart of the Mediterranean Sea. The Maltese Islands are already an archaeological wonder, dotted with some of the oldest free-standing stone temples on Earth, structures like Giwith, dot above Gantaja, and Haga Kim that predate even the pyramids of Giza. These massive limestone complexes, with their intricate altars and carved spirals, testify to a sophisticated temple-building culture that flourished here over 5,000 years ago. But a compelling question lingers in the clear blue waters that surround these ancient islands. What came before? The megalithic temples we see on land represent a mature, highly developed phase of this culture. Their origins, the first tentative steps toward such monumental architecture, remain shrouded in mystery. Given what we now know about global sea level rise, it is a logical and tantalizing possibility that the earliest chapters of Malta's story are not lost to time but to the sea. During the last ice age, the Maltese archipelago was not a small cluster of islands, but part of a much larger landmass connected to Sicily. As the glaciers melted, the rising Mediterranean would have gradually flooded the coastal plains and lower valleys around these islands, shrinking their territory and potentially swallowing the very sites where the temple culture first took root. Some researchers, looking at geological maps of the submerged continental shelf, speculate that systematic underwater surveys could one day reveal older structures, perhaps simpler shrines or foundational settlements, resting on now drowned portions of the Maltese platform. These would be the precursors, the architectural seeds from which the great above-ground temples later grew. While no such submerged ruins have been definitively confirmed, the hypothesis itself is a powerful shift in perspective. It transforms Malta from a museum of known wonders into a potential frontier for discovery. The islands become a promise, a suggestion that the Mediterranean, a sea we often think of as thoroughly explored, still holds profound secrets in its shallow shelves. The search here is not for a lost city, but for a lost beginning, for the foundational moments of a culture that would go on to reshape stone with breathtaking ambition. It reminds us that the history written on land may only be the later volumes of a much longer saga, whose opening chapters are patiently waiting, page by stone page, beneath the gentle waves. The search for Malta's lost origins reminds us that entire cultural foundations may lie just offshore. This pattern of sister cities lost to the sea finds one of its most spectacular examples not far from the legendary Heracleion. In the same silty embrace of Abu Cambay rests the sunken city of Canopus, a major port and religious center that shared the fate of its more famous neighbor. Discovered and excavated by the same team that found Heracleion, Canopus completes a missing chapter of the Nile Delta's ancient story. Its ruins tell a tale of profound cultural blending, where Egyptian and Greek traditions flowed together as seamlessly as the waters of the Nile met the Mediterranean. Divers have uncovered the remains of temples dedicated to the Egyptian god Serapis and the Greek god Dionysus, standing almost side by side in the submerged cityscape. This architectural harmony speaks volumes about the daily life of these cosmopolitan ports, where merchants, sailors, and priests from different worlds lived, traded, and worshipped in a shared space. The discovery of Canopus alongside Heracleion transforms our understanding from a singular event to a regional phenomenon. We are not looking at one unfortunate city that sank, but at a connected network of urban centers, a thriving maritime district that was entirely claimed by the sea. This was a cluster of economic power and spiritual life, a hub of the ancient world that simply vanished from the map. Their simultaneous submergence, likely due to the same combination of soil liquefaction, seismic activity, and rising waters, rewrites entire paragraphs of economic and religious history that scholars had assumed were lost forever. The paired fates of Heracleion and Canopus deliver a powerful lesson about the scale of historical loss. Civilizations are rarely single points on a map. They are interconnected webs of cities, trade routes, and shared cultures. When the sea rises or the earth shifts, it can erase not just a landmark, but an entire chapter of human connection, leaving behind only scattered stones and statues to hint at the vibrant world that once was. These sister cities resting together in the bay are a silent testament to the fragility of our collective memory and to the profound networks of the past that still wait, piece by piece, to be recovered from the deep. Scotland's lochs hold a different kind of secret, one built not on sinking land but on the water itself. In the dark, peat-stained waters of Loch Tay and other Scottish lakes, archaeologists have uncovered the remains of ancient crannogs. These were not natural islands but artificial ones, painstakingly constructed by piling timber, stone, and earth onto the loch floor to create a stable platform for a home, a workshop, or an entire small community. Built primarily during the Iron Age, these island dwellings were a brilliant adaptation, offering natural defense and easy access to fishing and transportation. Their story, however, did not end with their abandonment. Over the centuries, as regional water levels slowly rose and the lochs filled, many of these man-made islands became more deeply submerged, their wooden foundations slipping beneath the surface. This gradual sinking, far from destroying the sites, acted as a perfect preservative. The cold, oxygen-poor freshwater environment created a time capsule, halting the decay of materials that would have vanished on dry land. Within these submerged crannogs, researchers have found an astonishing array of organic artifacts, intricately carved wooden bowls, delicate textile fragments, Even remnants of food like grains and nuts have survived for over 2,000 years. This level of preservation offers something rare and intimate, a direct line into the daily rhythms of an ancient household. We are not just looking at stone foundations, we are seeing the very tools they used, the clothes they might have worn, and the meals they shared. A crannog is a complete domestic snapshot, frozen in the peat and water. This changes the value of a submerged site entirely. It moves beyond monumental architecture and into the realm of personal life, revealing the craftsmanship, diet, and domestic ingenuity of people who lived at the edge of the water by choice. These loch dwellings remind us that underwater archaeology is not solely about finding lost cities of legend. It is equally about recovering the quiet, profound details of ordinary existence. The crannogs teach a subtle but powerful lesson. Sometimes the most telling chapters of history are not written in grand stone, but preserved in the humble, waterlogged wood of a family home, waiting in the silent dark to share its story. The intimate details preserved in a Scottish crannog show a home, but what of a city that was a gateway to the world? For centuries, the port of Musuris existed as a shimmering name in ancient texts, a place of almost mythical wealth. Roman historians and Egyptian traders wrote of it as the bustling epicenter of the spice trade, where ships from the empire would arrive, their holds filled with gold and wine, to depart laden with priceless black pepper, ivory, and silks from the east. It was the vital commercial link between two great civilizations, a cosmopolitan hub where cultures and currencies mingled freely. Then it vanished. Not beneath a sudden wave, but into the silence of history, its precise location becoming one of India's great historical mysteries. The loss was so complete that scholars began to wonder if Musuris had been more legend than reality. The search for its remains became a detective story, piecing together clues from scattered pottery and half-remembered geography. Recent breakthroughs have begun to rewrite that story. Archaeologists, combining clues from classical texts with ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation, now believe they have found its heart near the modern town of Pattanam, in the lush Kerala backwaters. Here, the evidence is not of structures dramatically underwater, but of a landscape profoundly transformed. Excavations have revealed a wealth of material, from Roman amphorae and Indian pottery to ancient wharves and brick structures. The emerging picture suggests Musuris did not sink into the sea in a single cataclysm. Instead, its fate was dictated by the very river that gave it life. Researchers propose that a catastrophic flood event in the Periyar River around the 14th century altered its course dramatically. The once bustling harbor, the vital artery of trade, was likely choked with silt and abandoned as the river changed its mind, rendering the port useless and eventually burying it under layers of earth and sediment. This is a different kind of submersion, not by salt water, but by the land itself. The potential for parts of the city to lie beneath the waterlogged soil of the backwaters, or in river channels that have since shifted, illustrates a crucial and often overlooked truth. Civilizations can be erased not only by the rising ocean, but by the restless movement of the rivers that feed them. The rediscovery of Musuris, therefore, is a masterclass in historical convergence. It shows that finding a lost world requires marrying the poetry of ancient texts with the hard science of archaeology and geology. It is a reminder that some of history's greatest hubs now rest in silence, not under the open sea, but buried in the soft, forgetful earth of a river delta, waiting for the right combination of curiosity and technology to whisper their names once more. The story of a river's betrayal reminds us that water can erase history in many ways, but perhaps no body of water holds a more controversial and transformative tale than the Black Sea. In 2016, a team of researchers mapping the seafloor off the coast of Bulgaria made a discovery that seemed to reach directly into the realm of ancient myth. They identified a submerged ancient shoreline, a preserved coastline from a time when the world was utterly different. And resting upon that long-drowned beach was a substantial stone structure, a monolith that appeared deliberately placed, a silent sentinel from a forgotten age. Scientific analysis dated this site to a pivotal moment, around 7,600 years ago. This date is the key to a profound and debated geological story. At that time, the Black Sea was not the vast saltwater basin we know today. It was a much smaller, isolated freshwater lake, sitting hundreds of feet below the level of the global ocean. Then, according to a hypothesis proposed by marine geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman, a cataclysm occurred. As the great glaciers melted, the rising Mediterranean Sea eventually breached a natural dam at what is now the Bosporus Strait. They propose a titanic, roaring cascade of saltwater poured into the basin below, a flood of biblical proportions that could have raised the Black Sea's shoreline by several inches per day, drowning over 60,000 square miles of coastal land in a matter of months or years. The stone structure found on that ancient Bulgarian shoreline sits precisely within this proposed timeline, a potential piece of physical evidence from the world that was lost. For the early farming communities living around that fertile freshwater lake, this would not have been a slow change but a terrifying, relentless invasion. Their homes, their fields, their entire world would have vanished beneath an advancing wall of salt water, forcing a sudden, desperate migration inland. This geological event, if it occurred as described, provides a stunningly plausible route for one of humanity's most universal and enduring stories, the Great Flood. Cultures from the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical story of Noah describe a world-destroying deluge sent by the gods. The discovery of these sunken monoliths offers a tangible anchor, a real place where such a cataclysm could have unfolded. It suggests these ancient narratives are not pure allegory, but could be distant, cultural echoes of a shared traumatic memory, passed down through hundreds of generations, of the day the sea arrived and swallowed the land. This 25th ruin does more than add another site to our list. It weaves together the threads of geology, archaeology, and mythology into a single, powerful tapestry. It proposes that some of our oldest stories are not fiction, but fossilized history, memories of a real event so monumental it was etched into the identity of scattered peoples, a story of a green world now resting in the silent, dark depths of the Black Sea. Our planet's map is not a fixed document, but a living parchment rewritten by time and tide. From the silent pyramids of Yonaguni to the drowned forests of Doggerland, a consistent, haunting pattern emerges from the deep. These 25 sites, scattered across every ocean, form a mosaic of forgotten chapters, whether fully verified by science or shimmering in the realm of tantalizing speculation. They collectively pose a profound challenge to our understanding of time itself. They whisper that the story of human ambition, community, and monument building is far older and immeasurably more complex than our traditional timelines often allow. Each submerged stone is a question mark etched against the bedrock of history, urging us to expand our chronological horizons. They speak not of a single lost continent, but of a recurring human experience, a dance with a changing world where coastlines were never permanent, and the sea was both a highway and a horizon of change. These ruins celebrate the breathtaking resilience and ingenuity of ancient peoples, cultures that thrived on now drowned plains, navigated forgotten seas, and raised stones to gods and ancestors on shores that would one day vanish. They remind us of a simple, staggering fact. Over 70% of our planet is covered by water, a vast, liquid museum holding secrets we have only begun to catalogue. As sonar technology grows sharper and underwater robotics venture deeper, who can guess what other lost worlds await discovery in the abyss? Perhaps the next great revelation in human history will not be dug from a desert, but raised from the silent, sunken shelves of a continental coast. We encourage you to dive deeper into this mystery, to research these sites for yourself and trace the lines on this new, submerged map. What do you think these ancient stones are trying to tell us? Share your perspectives and questions in the comments below, as the conversation about our past is one we build together. If you enjoyed this journey to the edges of known history, please subscribe for more content that respectfully questions the boundaries of knowledge and explores the greatest puzzles of our shared human story. Thank you for watching, and always keep questioning.